There we go.
All right, it's, I don't know, it is Tuesday, September 5th, it's 7 o'clock. We're in the second floor conference room. I'll call the Personnel and Finance meeting to order. We'll start with introductions.
Kara Terry, Ward 1.
Jennifer Bergman, City Administrator.
Connie Hillman, City Finance Director.
John Davis, Police Chief.
Alderman at Large, Kevin Stewart.
Betty Hahn, Public.
Chris Schubert, HR Director.
Teresa Burke, Brainerd Dispatch.
And Gabe Johnson, Chair of the committee. We have 4 items on the agenda tonight. The first of which is to discuss withdrawing the School Resource Officer Service Agreement with ISD 181. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll apologize for this lengthy agenda item, but quite a bit of background information. I think it's important to frame this. So staff is requesting council approval to withdraw from the SRO contract with the school district. The agreement is to provide one SRO on a full-time basis and provide additional services outside of regular school hours. The contract is in effect till June 30th, 2025. The district was to pay the city of Brainerd $91,788 for the 2023-24 school year, and the following school year at a rate of $96,644. So as most of us probably know already, a new law which went into effect on August 1st places restrictions on an officer's ability to use force towards a student in instances where an officer would normally have had the lawful authority to do so. This restriction only applies to officers working as agents of the school district. An officer would be considered an agent if there was an agreement to provide SRO services, or potentially if an officer's work assignment provided similar services within the school. Officers would only be able to use a reasonable force when it is necessary to prevent bodily harm or death to the student or others. The most frequent instances where an officer uses force are situations where minimal force is used to restrict an individual's movements to stop or prevent criminal activity, versus the less frequent use of force, which would be to defend against bodily harm. The inability to prevent or de-escalate a situation with minimal force could lead to the incident escalating to the point of crimes being committed, injuries occurring, and now the need to use a higher level of force for defense. An officer's ability to properly intercede would be diminished when a student is engaging in disorderly conduct, fleeing from illegal activity, physically damaging property, etc. Officers for the first time now would be accountable for 2 differing use of force standards without the needed clarity of the law to make a split-second decision in circumstances that may be tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving. The attorney Lango in the League of Minnesota Cities is there would be an increase in potential liability if SROs continue to function within a school. The police department expects to still receive a significant number of calls for service related to the high school. The police department would designate an officer to be a school response officer to address calls for service from the high school and attempt to remain near the school campuses to enable rapid response. Couple other items just to note, since the agenda went out, is just in the last couple of days, Governor Walz has openly said that he is open and potentially might be calling a special session to address this matter. We remain hopeful. And so the recommended motion is to approve staff to work with Attorney Lango in withdrawing from the School Resource Officer Services Agreement with the Independent School District 181.
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. You referenced the most frequent instances where the use of force situations are minimal force.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Sure. When I say minimal force is police officers, really within the school or outside the school, most of the time when they use force, it's really quite minimal, and it's not maybe so much as the perception society has when they watch the news or they watch TV. And I'll give you a couple examples of minimal is simply if I needed to escort an individual out of a building that was unwilling to do so, I may simply just use a very minimal amount of force to take them by the arm and escort them out. that is a use of force. It would be considered restricting their movement, it would be a restraint. Therefore, there would be no ability to do so unless it was a situation where the individual was, potentially causing bodily harm or death.
May I continue? So if there were the school shooter, for example, which is one of the most common situations that folks are raising around this, that is bodily injury, obviously, so a use of force with something substantial like that, or a fight, would be justified.
Yeah, well, as far as an active school threat with weapons, I do not see this playing into part with that and, limiting our abilities there. However, a school fight, probably depending on the stage of the fight, and this is where, without a little lack of clarity about this law, there is some differing legal opinions on at what point an officer could intervene. Would they, if two students were arguing, could you speculate that it would lead to a fight and therefore at that point, use a minimal force to restrain, or would it have to rise to, well, now they're yelling, now they're threatening to fight, lack of clarity at what stage you could articulate and be on safe ground and say this was to prevent bodily harm. That's a little bit of the uncertainty and a lot of the uncertainty that, it's kind of out there right now with this.
Sorry. So my grandson experienced some harassment in the school down in the city's area. And it was verbal harassment and online. And the school resource officer was involved in having some of those conversations with the kiddos. There's no use of force there, but it was important to have that level of authority brought in to that harassment. Is that something that would continue at the school in terms of officer involvement?
It would probably really depend on the level.
Okay.
And, prior, an officer in the school would be able to assist school staff with some of those behavioral issues. If this incident, maybe continued or was, approaching the level of being a criminal matter versus just an internal behavioral matter, then if the school reported the incident,
Sure.
then we could intervene.
Okay.
So it would kind of depend on the scenario and, how it's progressing in some of those details.
Okay,
You good?
for now.
Yeah.
I'll hog it.
Yeah, so I saw the city of Lakeville actually decided to keep their SRO contract because of all of the benefits outside of the direct law enforcement benefits that the contract provides. So I'm kind of worried about getting rid of this because the SRO program is so valuable in so many ways outside of crime, violence, and restraining people. But that is a necessary part of the cop's job, I understand that. I have some questions on the money. $91,000 is quite an uncertainty too. So we are going to essentially provide the same level, similar-ish level of service. We're not going to be in the school,
Yeah.
but we'll be nearby the school.
Very attentive to the school,
Yeah.
should they call and
Right.
need us.
We'll still be doing football games, basketball games. We'll still have officers present at those.
Those would be on-duty officers when their time allows, would be present at the games, but as far as dedicating an officer in the fashion we did before.
Okay, that's not part of the SRO contract?
Well, and actually, that was written in the contract. It was for the SRO full-time in the school, and then additional services, such as sporting events. So that was part of the contract, and, according to Attorney Langle, even with the contract removed, little bit, have to be cautious as far as providing similar type of services and, especially if we were to invoice for it, like we had before, that would definitely be against legal advice.
So you're proposing we offer up $91,000 in services for free and just make the Brainerd taxpayers subsidize it?
Well, not in similar services or the same services, but, being attentive to their needs. And, the way I look at it is, a football game, hundreds and hundreds of people in a public event, treating that like we do, I guess, really any other public event in town when we have that large numbers in a public venue. we make every effort to have our, on-duty officers be present for, obvious reasons. So I would treat that the same as, other instances, maybe.
Like Street Fest?
Well, that's a little different because
you
Jason's
bill.
contracts, but Arts in the Park or, some other
Yeah,
that
but
type of stuff.
you bill, other people were just proposing to not bill the school district for receiving services other organizations are billed for.
Yes, because according to Attorney Lango, that would then put us back into what probably be.
Yeah, well, his record isn't very good in the courtroom, so. I don't know if I like the idea, especially since we're gonna be giving the same a similar level of services. The only services we won't be giving are the most valuable services provided through an SRO contract. So I don't know which way to go with this. But do you have any more questions? Do you have any more questions?
I do.
I think by not having the resource officer in the school, it takes the police department off some liability unless there's a specific level of threat or whatever.
That's correct.
That's the point of doing this. I'm not misunderstanding the
Yeah,
point.
no, I know.
Yeah.
So, to build on what Councilmember Johnson was saying, lost my train of thought, it will come back to me momentarily. You were saying something really brilliant that I was building.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Something about all of the other value.
yeah, it
SRO
probably
contracts.
was, it'll come back to me. Are we able to ask the public questions?
I was gonna ask Heidi if she
Yes.
if the school district did want to come to the table and share
That's what I
their
was
thoughts.
gonna
or-
ask.
I can answer questions, yeah.
Just question, you don't have any comments or statement you want to make on it?
Well, I think, we have such a strong relationship with our local police departments, Brainerd, Baxter. We want to stay in that strong partnership. I agree with what's being said at the table, that the power of an SRO is not about force. It's about relationships, knowing the students, knowing kind of the rhythm of the students, the pattern of the students in the building. So to Chief Davis's point, that intervening part, when you have those relationships with students, you kind of know, hey, that escalation, these two aren't a good mix. Where when you don't have that,
Right.
it starts to lead question. I also understand and sympathize with the liability that's being placed and support the clarification that's being sought out. I'm hopeful that the governor's open to that special session because I think school districts have been put in a very unique situation. I sent Chief Davis, we actually are, our superintendent organization, we surveyed around the state. And I provided them with that data of what school districts were choosing to do. And there's a good mix. Some are choosing to pull out of their agreements. Some are choosing to stay in. It's again, your comfort level with assuming that liability for your officers because it is putting them more in a personal liability situation. But we value the partnership. So we want to be in support of the community and the council's decision to support our officers.
Thank you.
I think that the uniform visibility in the schools is huge. And without that, my concern is it could cause some other issues because the students are going to start going, well, there's nobody here. Maybe, maybe not, but we don't have a crystal ball on that.
If I may, yeah, I don't disagree with that. Also, I also can think through my head instances where, poor behavior could escalate if a school resource officer was in the school but limited and kids being aware of that. For example, if a student decides to start destroying property, you're not able to intervene.
Correct.
If a student was trespassed from their property, couldn't, escort them out, by grabbing their arm. If you're taking them into custody, placing them under arrest for, even a violent offense, as far as a simple handcuffing to place them under arrest would not be allowable. So, on the reverse side also, and some of this is speculating, time will tell, but I could also see, the student body, if they recognize that inability of that officer to do some of those things, what.
Well, they are the worst people on earth, those teenagers.
Glad I was never one.
Yeah.
I remembered my question.
Okay,
So, Councilmember Johnson had talked about, providing the service, similar services at other events. And being reimbursed or not reimbursed depending on the event. So is this different if we were not reimbursed because it's a juvenile as opposed to the services that we provide for community events because they're adults but there could be juveniles? Is it because it's strictly associated with a school and this legislation, but it doesn't
Yes.
apply necessarily to
Cor-
every other thing that you do
Correct.
within reason?
Yeah, if it was, a school-sponsored coordinated activity. And if they paid for the service for us to be there, even if there wasn't a formal contract, it's believed that would be still construed as a contractual obligation that we have. And therefore the officers, would fall under this limitation,
So I'll get in the weeds just a little bit, I
Yeah.
guess more. What about an event at the school? So the school isn't necessarily sponsoring the event, but we're utilizing school space and there will be youth there.
And this is.
Theater, for example.
Yeah. This is specific to, public school districts. So I would be led to believe that if it was just housed in the facility, but it wasn't a school event, it would not be applicable. However, if and when we were to come across that, I would be, consulting with Attorney Langle and getting his, legal opinion on that and where we stand. So it's a good question.
I'm just thinking of like the Bridges of Hope event that we're gonna have at the theater, and there will be, teen kids there that are gonna be part of that event, and so,
Yeah.
because we're in the school, on the school grounds, and I don't know.
I don't believe it would be applicable.
No.
It seems like that part is pretty clearly written when they make reference to, being as an agent of the school district, working,
So you have to be
within the
employed
school.
by,
Well, contracted or,
Yeah.
there's.
yeah, through a
some-
contract.
Yeah, and, there's some other ways that it's believed that you could be looked upon as an agent, even outside of a contract. I think concerned about how similar the services you provide. If you just said no contract, but we're gonna have that same officer in the school every day, and his school resource officer doing the exact same functions, the legal advice is, I think that would be construed as too similar to where you'd be looked upon as an agent of the school district.
And how do you think it will impact your ability, Heidi, I guess, to enforce like the smoking on school grounds, or weapons, or drugs, or that
Anything
kind of thing?
criminal, we would contact law enforcement.
And so you'd still be able to come in and do the searches if you,
The difference is now is we have to make that phone call,
sure.
where before, there was that ability for the officer to be on site. Again, really strongly developing those relationships and intervening.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter of picking up the phone, making a call to dispatch to report that criminal type activity.
Or suspected even,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I think that we've met a lot, Chief Davis and I have, and I think the biggest thing too is, the power of our SRO is just the presence. And
Absolutely.
the sense of that security, and what we've been assured is that presence is still gonna be there, it's just gonna have to look different, it's not gonna be in the school. Our administrators have talked with Chief Davis about how to access that service. We agree this isn't ideal.
It feels like we're going backward, actually, from
I
the
think,
direction we
I
should be going.
think the meetings we had in the spring too about really working through that contract and the commitment to the contract, and it's disappointing to see that this is where we are right now. I'm very hopeful that the governor will.
Well, I think it's a work
Clarity
in
to
progress, so
legislation.
because it's so new, so it's gonna be a learning curve, but I'm like, what Heidi says, I think, the governor's gonna take a look at this and probably getting pressure from the police unions.
Very much
and
so.
the Chiefs Association and stuff, so,
Well, and parents too, because it's scary.
Yeah, and it's,
It's
and
not
again,
like
that's
it's-
where cities and districts are doing different things.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing a mix around the state, and it really is what liability are you willing to assume? You just need to know as a district, we support our officers, and we want that relationship.
Thank you.
Anything else? I gave us 20 minutes for this, we've used up 19.
Oh my goodness, we're right
Just
on
kidding,
track.
no, you're. You have
We
anything
did
else?
use up 19, no.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so, I'll say I'm gonna vote in favor of the motion, just because it's what John's recommending, and, you understand what the police officers need to be able to do, and what they are doing in the schools already, and if that's just not gonna work out with this new law. Hope to goodness we get that special session and we get the clarification in the law, but for now, I guess I'll support the withdrawal.
I agree with you, you're the expert, and I trust your judgment, so.
Next up, so is our school board will have to take action, because right now the contract's in place. And so the request is for a withdrawal. The Brainerd School Board will have to take action on that at next Monday's board meeting on the 11th,
Okay.
so.
Oh, so you guys, the school board might let the city out on the
It
11th?
has, contract's written that it has to be mutually agreed upon. So the
Okay.
request now, my understanding, will come from the city of Brainerd.
Yeah.
We'll take that before the Brainerd School Board, and then the contract can be withdrawn upon mutual agreement.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Mr. Chair, before you move on, if I may just add, I did get a call this afternoon from Councilmember Chesak. He is going to request to have something added to the agenda. If we could send a letter on behalf of the city of Brainerd asking the governor to call a special session. So as long as we're talking about this, I just thought I'd share that with you.
Good deal. Item number 2, accept retirement of Police Administrative Supervisor Julie McCullough. Chris.
Good evening. After 28 years of service, Police Administrative Supervisor Julie McCullough has announced her retirement. Ms. McCullough's last day in the office will be October 13th, and she has requested to utilize accrued vacation time to remain on payroll through November. With Ms. McCullough's retirement, staff requests to begin the promotional process to backfill her position. Therefore, the recommended action is a motion to accept with regret Police Administrative Supervisor Julie McCullough's retirement effective November 30th, 2023, and to authorize severance pay per city policy. Further, to authorize staff to begin the promotional process to backfill the position.
So moved, thank you for reminding me, that's what I'm supposed to do, I forgot.
I can't kick you, my leg.
No.
Second.
Any questions? No, it's an unfortunate retirement. It's a lot of institutional knowledge.
With regret.
With regret.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is to consider voting operations technology and election resources, acronym VOTER, agreement with Crow Wing County.
Yes. So part of the 2023 election was a 1.25 million annual appropriation for the voter account. Crow Wing County's allocation will be $15,600 a year. 75% or $11,700 can be retained by the county since they administer the absentee voting for all precincts. So the other 25% of the allocations, roughly $3,900, will be distributed to the municipalities within the county. And that estimate is to be about $77 per municipality in Crow Wing County. The allocation rolls over from year to year. Crow Wing County does a lot. They maintain all of our equipment. They train our judges. Basically, Crow Wing County would have to distribute that $3,900 unless there's another agreement in place. The agreement Crow Wing County is proposing is to allow Crow Wing County voter account to build and retain it until it exceeds $50,000. And then they would revisit additional allocations. So we're looking at roughly $154 per election cycle. And with all of the work that the county does for the city to be able to administer the election, staff is recommending that the city enters into the agreement with Crow Wing County to be able to retain the whole $15,600 annual voting allocation. Staff is very grateful what the county staff does for the elections, and not all counties do what Crow Wing County does, and it's truly invaluable. So again, our recommendation is to authorize appropriate signatures on the voter agreement with Crow Wing County to retain the annual funding until it ever exceeds $50,000.
Nice one move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up, discussion of Lake Community Collaborative response for payment.
I'll start it.
Connie, John, anybody?
And Jennifer, well, all three of us. Basically, on May 1st, the council received a response from the Lakes Media Collaborative attorney. The letter and the agenda request was included in the packet. The letter basically states that Lakes disputes owing the city any money because they rendered all services it had to the city, and the city always paid Lakes services after they were rendered prior to year end. So the later one is not correct in that the city always issued payment for services in that year by the first quarter. So give you a lot of history here. Basically effective 2006, they use the franchise fees to pay that. We don't receive the franchise fees from Charter and CTC until March of the following year. So we would get that money in March, and we would pay Lakes Media Collaborative by April 1st, the first meeting in April each year was paid. They rendered all services, the franchise go through there. It should be noted that there was no actual contract that ever known to exist between Lakes Media and the city, only council actions, even though reference was made to a contract in the March 2nd, 2009 minutes. The frequency and reliability of meeting broadcasts has been decreasing over the years, but around May of 2019, with the demolition and remodel of the high school, it actually removed the physical connection coming into the city. And all meeting broadcasts through Lakes Media ended at that point. We started doing YouTube and WebEx, etc. in November through the county board. So basically we paid them in April of 2019 and our services ended a couple months after that. So unless Jennifer or Sean has something to add, staff is looking for direction on the next step.
What's our attorney say?
Our attorney has said that he's not sure that we have any recourse in this, as there was no agreement or contract put into place in order to dispute a contract.
So if we don't take a step, that's basically gone. And then the question with that is, what step would we take?
Right, now that it's risen to attorneys yelling at each other, it's kind of just pointless. I thought we were just going to ask for our money back, but instead it became an attorney thing, so we could burn all the money we wanted to have attorneys yell at each other, but it's not going to benefit the taxpayers at all.
And we have asked for them to reimburse us the money.
I think it's a dead issue at this point, because how much money do we want to spend with attorneys running around?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of attorney bills.
No.
All they want to do is get paid again. So we'll just leave this as it is. Don't think we need any more action. So
Do we need a motion or anything, or just leave it go?
let it go.
Okay.
With that, we're adjourned at 7:27.
Nice. Right on time.
Good luck, Sean.